Journey IFC strives to create safe spaces to worship God. Know that you are welcome just as you are, regardless of religious background or lack thereof, skin color, political affiliation, sexuality, age, culture, or any other label you own or society throws on you. You are welcomed and celebrated here just as you are.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Today's, you just want to know my name?
They're playing God. It's like you're playing God.
So today's story is from a friend of Jesus called Matthew. And this is from the version of the Bible, the translation called The Message. If you decide for God, living a life of God worship, it follows that you don't fuss about what's on the table at mealtime, or whether the clothes in your closet are in fashion. There is far more to life than the food you put in your stomach, more to your outer appearance than the clothes you hang on your body. Look at the birds, and free and unfettered, not tied down to a job description, careless in care of God. And you count far more to God than birds. Has anyone, by fussing in front of the mirror, gotten taller by so much as an inch? All this time and money wasted on fashion. Do you think it makes that much difference? Instead of looking at the fashions, walk out into the field and look at the wildflowers. They never primp or shop, but have you ever seen color and design quite like it? The 10 best-dressed men and women in the country look shabby alongside them. If God gives such attention to the appearance of wildflowers, most of which are never ever seen, don't you think God will attend to you, take pride in you, and do God's best for you? What I'm trying to do here is get you to relax. Do not be so preoccupied with getting so you can respond to God's giving. People who don't know God and the way God works fuss over things. But you know God and how God works. Steep your life in God reality, God initiative, God provisions. Don't worry about missing out. You'll find all your everyday human concerns will be met. Give your entire attention to what God is doing right now. Don't get worked up about what may or may not happen tomorrow. God will help you deal with whatever hard things come up when the time comes. That's the reading.
Well, how different. For those of you who might be a little disoriented by that last reading, I'll give you a small excerpt from the King James Version. The flowers, neither do they toil, nor do they spin. Now you're familiar with the passage? Exactly. Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Creator, thank you for caring so much more for us than all the glory of your creation. I know we were first on your mind, and neither were we last in your creation, because you're creating still. Amen. So, kind of disorienting this morning. Nobody got a name tag except for one person. Didn't know he was a journeyer and said, oh, I see something that got neglected. But that's great. That's Journey. I love it. But let's talk about what was just read. What's in a name? Everything has a name, unless you call it a whatchamacallit. But that's a name in and of itself, isn't it? We all have names. Some are given to us by our parents. Nicknames are given to us by our friends and family. Sometimes derogatory names are given to us because of who we are or what we're perceived to be. So names can lift up, they can also hurt. But let's look at that. Let's go to the first one. I'll give you a little secret. You know, like a magician, I probably shouldn't reveal things, but where do sermons come from? You just happen to be walking somewhere and all of a sudden it hits you right between the eyes. This is a picture of a very small cemetery in Georgetown in San Gabriel Park. It's a Hispanic cemetery because when most of these people were buried, they could not be buried in a regular cemetery. What you see here is just grass. This is at the very back and off to the side, lilies growing up. So obviously, at one point in time, someone brought lilies to this place, and the pots disintegrated and the bulbs multiplied. But what we know for sure is there's an indentation here. This is a grave, but there's no marker. Did it ever have one? We don't know. But given its place and the markers around it, it was probably a marker of wood that has long since disintegrated. I actually went and tried to find a plot map for this. There isn't one. So I don't know their name. Was it male, female? Who knows? God knows. Here's yet another one. Obviously, more lilies were left here. Somebody really loved this person. But not as much as God does. Because again, God knows their name, even though it's lost to history. And more than likely, because of the lack of any current decorations, maybe not even any family left around that even knows who they are. God knows who they are. Now we do have one. Again, towards the back. A wooden marker. But yet, you still can't read the name. Who was this person? God knows, because God created each and every one of these three people we're talking about right now. And given forensics and physics and just the nature of things, there is probably nothing really left of their earthly remains. But yet, there's someone that God created, and they have a name. A little more care here. Probably long ago, somebody was placed there again, no marker, at the very fringes of a cemetery that's quite ornate if you go out there. But at least there's some sort of marker to indicate that there was one of God's creations. But yet, we don't know their name. Now, as I was walking through this cemetery, I'm wondering about all these people. God knows each and every one of them. There's not a living thing on earth that God does not know about. There's not a living thing in the universe that God does not know about. I spotted this grave. Part of what you see in this cemetery is a lot of infant graves. Sometimes a day or two is on the clock. Sometimes there's not even a dash. In this case, there isn't one. Obviously, these twins died on the day that they entered the world. Got a little closer. Still no name. No names. But this one hits me hard. August 31st, 1965. That's the day I was born. Not just the day, but the year. I looked into Mr. and Mrs. Juan B. DeHuis. No record of them. No indication of who these two were. They were loved. They got a headstone. But yet, not a name. God knows their name. So, think about this. Look around at one another. Some of us are new here today, and except for a short introduction, do you really remember names? I'm really bad about that. I will tell you that. I love being disciples of Christ, United Churches of Christ, and Journey because they all have name tags. It's a wonderful thing. I am not God, obviously. And we are so known by our Creator that it says that God even knows the number of hairs on our head. Some of us are a little more difficult than others. But again, in the passage of Matthew, we are assured that no matter how you feel about yourself, the feeling of worthlessness, because we've all felt it, the feeling of loss, where's God when I have had so much taken away? Anyone here has not asked that question, then you are in the minority. Does God know what's going on all the time? Yes. And God puts a name to each and every one. Now we have names that are given to us at birth or shortly thereafter. My father was one of those with immigrant parents that could not read or write English. I thought for the longest time I was a junior. But when we got to Texas, they wouldn't let me do that because on my father's birth certificate, all it said was baby boy DePalma. And because of that, I'm not a junior in the eyes of Texas.
Shame on Texas.
Well, can you imagine that? They even spelled the last name wrong. So we have a different last name than my father's side of the family. And then there's the idea of what is my father's real name? Doesn't matter what we remember or what's on a birth certificate. It's how God knows you. You as you have transformed into the person that you were meant to be. There's this debate of whether or not we can change our names and our genders. Doesn't matter to God because we were created by God to be who we were. Birth certificate is just a piece of paper because God really knows who you are. Think about that. A God so loving that when you walk out, you see all the beauty. I don't know if you've been to Colorado or even in Virginia and look from the Shenandoah Valley up into the mountains and just go, wow, God did a smash-up job. And if that is so beautiful, if what we have in this world is so beautiful, how much more are we created in an image that is actually perfection in God's eyes? Because no matter who you are or where you're on life's journey, God knows who you are. God named you when you were the glimmer of a thought in the Creator's eyes. What privilege. Think about it. Because if God did not care about us, then why would we care about one another? Now, we've talked about names. We don't know who they are. And not very many people happen upon a cemetery where you can't read the names. This is a very rare occasion. But there are plenty of people that we don't know their names. You drive down the road, that person living in a tent. There's no name on their mailbox. Do we even care? But God knows their name. Sometimes we get wrapped up in the fact of who we are and people who are different from us. How much harder would it be to commit malice against another person if you wondered what their name was? Maybe we should approach life and everyone we come across, rather than sizing them up by the way they look, go, I wonder what their name is. God has given us all a wonderful thing, a name, an identity. And no matter how you feel about yourself on a day-to-day basis, whatever's got you down, no matter what, God's got your back. God has your name. When the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. And God will know my name. You come to the pearly gates. God doesn't even have to open a book. He knows each and every one of us, each and every one of you, by name. I would love to aspire to know everyone by name. Never going to happen, trust me. As we get older, it's even harder. Sometimes we don't even know our own name. But the thing is God has a name for everything. And in that wonderful time of creation, the beginning of time, names were given to everything. But once God created the one creation that had the ability to love, but also reject, how much pain that can cause someone that has named you. If you're a parent and you have an estranged child, you want that child to love you, but sometimes they don't, or they think they don't. You gave them their name, you gave them their life. How much more our Creator is forgiving and open. Just like the prodigal son, we don't know his name either. But his father knew the name. I'm sure he shouted that name as he ran towards his son coming home. Think about this. After being away from God, however little or far it may be, for however long it may be, or short of time, do you think that God yells your name when you come back? So think about this. What's in a name? We may never know the names of these people. You may never know the names of the people that live along the side of the road, or the people that are countlessly killed in wars, conflicts, people who are murdered. These are all names that are known to God. And my point today is not to bring you down, but to lift you up. Because even though we may not know a name, God does. And that's what really matters. So I encourage you from now on, put a little more extra effort into thinking about the name of a person you're introduced to, or that introduces themselves to you. Say it back to them. It is an identity. Maybe when you hang that gift bag out the window, the care bag, maybe ask the person's name. Hi, my name is Joe. What is yours? Because remember, we're also God to the world. And if God knows their name, maybe we should make an effort to identify that. Also, be careful when you name things, because obviously words have power. One of the most famous names was spoken after 3 days in the grave. Jesus didn't say, "Come forth." I think we would have had a graveyard full of people. Come forth. Jesus was specific. Lazarus, come forth. Jesus knew Lazarus' name. And if you notice, in the Gospels, very rarely is a character not identified by some name. If it's not a proper name, they're given a title. Very rarely. So put a name to everything and everyone that you meet. Beautiful woman with the dark vest, who has a caring heart. I know Natalie's name, but if I didn't, that would be an accurate description. It's just as important as a proper name. So this week, think about what's in a name. Don't let people become faceless, nameless people that you pass by, because God doesn't allow it. God knows their name. God knows your name. And God knows who you are. Shall we pray? Gracious Heavenly Creator, thank you for giving me a name. Thank you for creating me. More so, thank you for creating all the people and the things in my life, because when I'm in my deepest despair, all I have to do is open my eyes and look around and go, God cared enough about me to give me everything around me, all these wonderful people, a wonderful world, a beautiful day. Amen. Well, here we are at the end of our time here. Sometimes we find God where we least expect God to be, in the emptiness. But we know God is there because if we listen, you'll hear your name. Go in peace this week. Be God to the world. And wonder, what is their name? Amen.
Amen.